For Eric J on Sports, I'm Eric J, and this is what I think. The NFL is probably the most watched and attended professional sport in America, and arguably the world, with the possible exception of soccer in some of the European and South American countries. But for the most part, the NFL is the most watched professional sport. The one glaring weakness to the NFL's attendance and interest is the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is the NFL's annual All-Star game. Now, when you look at the All-Star games for Major League Baseball and for the National Basketball Association, those games are highly sought out. They're interesting. People want to watch. People want to attend. Stars come out. The whole thing. But the NFL's Pro Bowl has not been that for a long time and has become something that the NFL does just because it's something to do. Now, the NFL is looking at making a change to the Pro Bowl, trying to draw more interest. The NFL is considering changing the Pro Bowl from a conventional football game to a week of skills competitions culminating with a flag football game at the end of the week. Now, when you think about All-Star games, in whatever sport you're looking at, All-Star games are usually opportunities for top players to play together. Whether it was Bird, Isaiah, and Michael Jordan on the same team, or whether it was Magic and Akeem Olajuwon and David Robinson on the same team, Magic passing to Karl Malone, whatever it was, the year that Michael Jordan was on one squad and the other squad had Shaq and Yao Ming and Dirk and Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan, and the coach ran out 4 7-footers with Steve Francis. Whatever it is, that's what the All-Star game was. And in the NFL, it was things like Michael Irvin catching passes from Joe Montana. It was Junior Seau and Ray Lewis in the same linebacking core together playing on the same defense. It was Randy Moss and T.O. Terrell Owens catching passes from Kurt Warner in the same wide receiver core in the same offense. That's what the NFL Pro Bowl was. That's what people wanted to see. But over time, the Pro Bowl went from being a conference versus conference field of dreams to a game that was more like a practice. People stopped hitting. People stopped covering. Nobody was putting out any effort. There was no real intensity in the football game. And it was because nobody wanted to get hit, because you had all these millionaire players who, after playing 16 games in a season, possibly 4 preseason games, depending on what their team did, and with the London games now 5 preseason games for some folks, and then going through the playoffs and then ultimately getting to the Super Bowl, some of these millionaire players just didn't have it in them emotionally, physically, and mentally to play one more game. Even if it was a game where they knew they weren't going to be in there very long. Even if it was a game where they knew that the outcome didn't matter. Even if that game included a free trip to Hawaii for a week for your family paid for by the NFL. These millionaire players didn't want to do it after what would have been 24 weeks of football for some of them. So first, the NFL decided to let anybody who appeared in the Super Bowl skip the Pro Bowl. So that means that Tom Brady has been elected to the Pro Bowl whoever knows how many times, but he was allowed to skip about 10 of them because he had appeared in the Super Bowl. And that helped, but there were still guys who didn't want to come. There were still guys who feigned injury and didn't want to come. So then the NFL decided to move the Pro Bowl. And since there was 2 weeks between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, the NFL decided to move the Pro Bowl in between those weeks to get people interested in the game, because there was still football and there wasn't that dead week and the whole thing. Didn't help attendance. So then the NFL decided to go with an interesting concept, if you will, by bringing in guest coaches and having the guest coaches select their teams. So now you don't just have in the NFC Randy Moss and Terrell Owens catching passes from Kurt Warner, and in the AFC Junior Seau and Ray Lewis in the same defense. Now you have teams that are selected by guest coaches, which means you could end up with who knows what. It could be more interesting. or it could be less interesting. But that didn't increase ratings or spark player participation. Players still didn't want to go and the fans still didn't want to watch. So now the NFL is considering changing the game to a game of flag football. But there's a lot of things that suddenly don't make sense, or there's a lot of things that suddenly have to change or be considered if you do this. What the NFL isn't realizing is that flag football can sometimes be more dangerous and more physical and more perilous than a regular game of football where they don't include any tackling. Because think about it. When you were a kid and you played football, if you played touch football, the object was just to put one hand or two hands. If you're playing two-hand touch, just put one hand or two hands on a player. Maybe somebody created a rule where you had to touch the person's backside. Maybe not. But two-hand touch, you have to put two hands on the body of the player with the ball. You can do that as you fly by. You can do that accidentally. You can do that any kind of way, but you can get that done without any real risk. If you're playing non-tackle football where you just have to wrap the player up to get them to stop, all you got to do is run up behind the guy and put your arms around him. One part of his body, his legs, his waist, his chest, whatever. You don't really have to hit the guy, but you just have to make contact with the person and put your arms around them and stop them, and they're done. Still pretty safe, still pretty sound, just boring. Now, flag football is an interesting game, but flag football requires more precision than touch football or non-tackle football. Because in flag football, you have to focus on a single part of the person's anatomy so that you can grab the flag off of the person as they're running by at top speed without snatching the person's shorts off. Because I used to referee flag football games and I saw that happen. A guy was wearing a red flag, but he also had on red shorts, and one of his opponents reaching for his red flag ripped his red shorts off of him. So you have to be really precise to grab the flag off of the player while the player's running by at top speed. And I've also seen, while being involved with these flag football games, two players running at the same ball carrier at the same moment, attempting to grab the same flag, and have these two defensive ball players crash into each other and one of them laid out with a concussion. So flag football can be a little more perilous than non-tackle or touch football. But this is what the NFL wants to do, even though there are still opportunities to be hurt in flag football. So you ask the NFL, does this really make sense? Have you really thought this through? But there's a bigger issue. Other than the fact that you can still get hurt playing flag football, there's a bigger issue. And that issue is, in flag football, you don't need offensive linemen or defensive linemen. So that means that guys like Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and Max Crosby, these guys won't make the Pro Bowl because you don't need 300-pound guys blocking, and you don't need 300-pound guys attempting to sack the quarterback because it's flag football. You can't really hit the guy. I mean, you can run at him and take his flag off, but the question is it going to be passing league flag football where the quarterback just takes the ball and nobody snaps it to him? He just picks the ball up off the ground, takes a couple of steps back, slaps the ball, everybody runs, and he throws a pass. And then you have 3 seconds to run at him before you take his flag off. If that's the case, then you don't really need offensive linemen or defensive linemen. You may not even really need linebackers in this case. If it's going to be real full contact flag football, then why play flag football? Because if you're going to have the 300-pound scrum on the line of scrimmage, then what happens if through the course of offensive linemen blocking and protecting the quarterback from defensive linemen, a flag falls on the ground? Maybe the refs think that the flag belongs to somebody else and blows a whistle errantly, or anything could happen and it ends up looking silly. So you don't need offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So they suddenly become excluded from Pro Bowl selection. Or you select them and just say, okay, yeah, you're selected to the Pro Bowl, but you're not going to get in the game. Also, will there be a need for punters or kickers or long snappers or kick returners? Because in flag football that I've been associated with, after a touchdown, the team got 7 points. So there was no extra point, or if there was a touchdown, the team did 2-point conversions. And the 2-point conversions are 2-point tries, offensive formation tries that were worth 1 point. So there was no need for a kicker. There was no need for a long snapper. There was no need for a holder. So are you just going to do the same with the specialists that you did with the offensive and defensive linemen? You're elected, you're an all-star, but you don't get to go to the game. We don't need you coming to Hawaii or Las Vegas or wherever the game's going to be. We don't need you to come. So what's the NFL going to do? Does Aaron Donald make the Pro Bowl but not get to play? Or do you put a 300-pounder out there and have him running around chasing wide receivers in a game of flag football, possibly turning an ankle or injuring his knee because he's out of his element? The NFL has messed up on this one, but I have a solution. The best option that I can think of, because my mom always said, if you don't have a solution to the problem, don't complain about the problem. Well, I'm offering a solution. What the NFL should do is create a 3-week break during the season. After about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way, probably around week 12. Don't give any teams byes. Eliminate the byes through the entire season. But create about a 3-week break after about week 12, where every team is on a bye. After the 12th game of the season, every team has a week off where there's no football. Then during that second week off, players that had been selected as all-stars to go to the Pro Bowl during that second week off, which is in essence week 14 of the season, that's when you play the game. In the middle of the season, while people are still hyped and jazzed about football. Because after the Super Bowl, there's a malaise. People don't care about football as much anymore, which is why people stopped watching the Pro Bowl. But week 14, when after week 12 there was no football, so people are itching for football, you give them the Pro Bowl. You select your all-stars during the first 3/4 of the year, and people attend the Pro Bowl. And then there's another week off, so people that played in the Pro Bowl can have a chance to rest. So you're resting your entire league with a dead week of no football. You have your Pro Bowl game, and then you're resting all of the Pro Bowlers after the Pro Bowl game. And so then you come back 3 weeks after week 12, which is in essence week 16. Yeah, I know 13 was the dead week, 14 was the Pro Bowl week, 15 was the week after the Pro Bowl. So it's actually week 16, but there's a 3-week break. So after week 16, you come back with the season. You host the game in Hawaii or in Mexico or in Brazil or in London. So these guys really want to go. It's a free family trip someplace that they don't normally go. You don't have the game somewhere nearby that they're going to go anyway. I mean, you don't have the game in Vegas so that the Vegas Raider players who are a part of the Pro Bowl go, yeah, we're just going back to our own stadium. You have it in Hawaii or in Mexico or in Brazil or in London. And then you create a set of rules that will protect the players, but will still be interesting football. Maybe you're still tackling. Maybe you're not tackling. Maybe you're doing wrap-up tackling. Maybe you're just, in the grasp and controlled. Whatever it is, you protect the players so nobody gets truly hurt, but it's still interesting football. Maybe you play by Canadian rules where you got 12 guys on the field with the shorter end zones or whatever. 3 downs instead of 4. Whatever you do, you create a game that's interesting football, play it during the season in a place where the players would not normally go. Hawaii or Mexico or Brazil or London or someplace like that. A hotbed of sports. But flag football is the worst idea that the NFL could have come up with for fixing the Pro Bowl. But it's not really the worst idea that the NFL has come up with, because the worst idea that the NFL has come up with is going to be the next really bad idea that the NFL comes up with that's going to be dumber than the idea that the NFL has come up with for the Pro Bowl. And because that's what the NFL does. The NFL does a lot of great things, makes a lot of people very, very rich, but then has a lot of dumb ideas. Remember to like and share this video and subscribe to this channel, and visit my website at the URL in the description below, and follow me on Facebook at Eric J on Sports 1 and on Instagram and Twitter at Eric J on Sports. And for Eric J on Sports, I'm Eric J, and this is what I think.